Anybody have an update on the soccer status games? Anyone? Anyone
No,
follow?
it just started.
We'll be calling the meeting to order very shortly. Anybody have an update on the soccer status games? Anyone? Anyone
No, it
follow?
just started.
See, I knew that was going to happen, so it was a good way to test the system. So usually I know a local team won, or like Portugal one year, the honking town or something like that. So it's good. All right, so we will call the meeting to order. And I know for members of the public, they might wonder why we started today at 2 o'clock. The board meeting has been moved an hour later to accommodate members attending a local event in recognition of National Indigenous Peoples Day, which was a very important event. I know it was well attended. Ourselves with administration and the chiefs and deputies were there. And they were also honored as well, and I'll pass that over to them in a second. But before that, I just wanted us to recognize National Indigenous Peoples Day, a day for all of us to recognize and celebrate the diverse cultures and outstanding contributions of Indigenous communities. Today, the board and the London Police had the honor to attend the powwow at the Green in Wortley Village. I'm also reminded that more work is needed to strengthen the relationship between the board and the Indigenous community, but I'm very hopeful. So I wanted to, I'll ask Vice Chair to take the chair for a second because I wanted to move a motion to recognize today as a board, and I'll look for her to second that. Or
That's fine. Calling the question. Moved by Mo, seconded by me, I suppose. Anyone else have any other discussion? All in favor? Excellent, passed. Back to you.
thank you very much. So great. So I wanted to turn over to Chief because I know they were recognized as well, and I thought that was important to recognize. So Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this morning was kind of funny. I ended up at the Ontario Police College for the sunrise ceremony, and Deputy Chief Longworth ended up at the Green for that sunrise ceremony. And Mr. Hill presented us with recognition around the work that we've been doing in our local community to build on those relationships. And even at the college during the ceremony, you know, talking about the significance of today and the history and the culture, but the gentleman mentioned, Mr. Henry mentioned the, you know, friction between police and Indigenous or Aboriginal communities. And here he is today at the Ontario Police College, surrounded by police leaders, recruits from all over the province, talking about what his culture means to him. And so he talked about the change that's been occurring. And I think what Mr. Hill did today just kind of builds on what I heard at the police college around how relationships are changing. Today when at the afternoon event, it gave me an opportunity to speak, and I talked about how you know, we've had some difficult discussions, but we've decided we have to move forward and try to resolve some of those issues and to begin to develop and maintain positive relationships. And I think our inclusion in these types of events is just a continued step forward, and our ongoing commitment to doing that. So it was very nice recognition, and we appreciate it very much.
So congratulations on behalf of the board for our chiefs and the London Police Service for that recognition. So on the topic of recognitions, hopefully I don't put anyone here on the spot, but we have one of our members that's here in the room today. But on behalf of the Police Service Board, we want to congratulate a couple of London Police Services officers on receiving prestigious awards, and I'll get over to the chief very shortly. But on the board level, we wanted to say thank you very much. It was at the June 11th Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police and Ontario Media Relations Officer Network, Constable Sandesha Bo, on recipient of this year's Media Officer of the Year Award, and she's actually here, and I'm going to put her on the spot and make her stand up and wave at us, and we just want to congratulate you on behalf of the Police Service Board. So thank you very much thank you for bringing some awards here back to London. And Constable Tanya Alexander, who's not with us today, was a recipient of this year's Youth Service Volunteer Award. So we'll be sending out letters to you both very shortly, and we wanted to thank you on behalf of the police board. And Chief, over to you.
Yes, it was, You know, we have many officers that do great things across our organization in so many different areas, and we try to do our best to honor and recognize that. And one of the ways is through the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, and as you can imagine, the number of officers across Ontario and the number of officers get recommended for these awards. So I think it just speaks volume to the quality of the work that's done by Sandasha and as a media officer, being recognized as the Media Officer of the Year award, and Tanya Alexander that, you know, does so much in our community with youth, in particular basketball, but so many other things that she does to try to build a strong relationship. So it was very nice for both of them to be recognized and come up to the conference with their families and receive that. So.
Thank you very much, and again, congratulations to you all. And one last thing, I believe our chief is back on as the vice president of the Association of Chiefs of Police, so I want to congratulate him on that, but I just wanted to make sure, clarify I got that right, and let us know a little bit about that if you can.
Yeah, sure. Talking about putting people on the spot, but yeah, so I guess it'd be my third year as vice president. There's 3 vice presidents, first vice president and the president that, and a secretary treasurer make up the board. So it's just nice to have a voice at the table and not only to raise issues here locally, but to open my eyes to bigger issues across the province sometimes that may have an impact on us. So it's nice to be part of it.
Perfect, thank you. So a lot of great things happening here locally and around the province. So I know I might have asked this before, but just to double check, disclosures of pecuniary interest from any members? Seeing none, we'll move into the meeting. Any new business? I know there was one item that might be coming forward from member Vanessa, who's not here right now. And it is related to the National Indigenous Peoples Day, as well as potentially a referral to some work for a committee. So I just wanted to add that to the agenda in the event that she does come back in time. She's currently celebrating with her family at the ceremony. So I'll look for someone to move that. Moved by Susan, seconded by Helmer. All those in favor? And it carries. Confirmation of the minutes from May 17th. Any questions on that? Look for a mover. Mayor, seconded by Javid. All those in favor? And it carries. Human Resources Report, Deputy Chief Longworth.
I have nothing to add unless there's any questions about the report.
Looking to members for any questions? All right, look for a motion to approve. Moved by Javid, seconded by Susan. All those in favor? And it carries. Number 6, Revenue Offsetting Personnel Cost Report.
Yeah, this report, you saw a version of this back in January, and this is just a report that outlines the programs that provide funding, that supplements the funding received from the municipality to support 89 positions within the London Police Service. And although the majority of these positions are not full cost recovery, the funding of over $7.5 million does offset a significant operational expense to the municipality and the police service.
Great. Members? Helmer?
Thank you. I know we discussed this earlier when we were dealing with the actual agreements. I just wanted to mention that the first two, the Community Policing Partnership and the Safer Communities 1000 Officer Program, did come up at Community and Protective Services when we were processing those agreements. There were some questions about whether this funding would allow for more officers or not, and I gave them the tough news that not only is it not providing for more officers, but notice the note there that says there's going to be a new grant and we may get less money, so be on the lookout. So that did come up earlier this week.
Board? All right, for a motion to receive. Moved by Helmer, seconded by Javid. All those in favor? And it carries. Number 9, April 9th auction.
And this is the kind of report you've seen as well. Anytime we liquidate any the property or any revenues generated and monies transferred to the Police Services Board, there's a report indicating that. And there was an auction held in April that where that happened, and a little over $13,000 was deposited.
Great. Any questions about the auction? Going once, going twice. Look for a motion to receive. Moved by Javid, seconded by Helmer. All those in favor? And it carries. Sold. All right. Thought I'd make it a little bit interesting. See, everybody's quiet today. You guys aren't smiling much over there. Number 8, Collection of Preservation and Control of Evidence and Property Mandatory Board Report. Longworth again.
Yeah, this report is a little different than the last one in that it outlines the disposition of property that's taken place over the past year in totality, some of which has generated revenue totaling over $36,000, which is again turned over to the board under in accordance with the Police Services Act.
Any questions? All right, look for a motion. Moved by Susan, seconded by, moved by Susan, seconded by Javid. All those in favor? And it carries. All right, 2019-2021 LPS Business Plan and 2017 London Police Service Annual Report. Over to you, Longworth.
So as you're aware, the provincial adequacy standards require that police services develop a business plan every 3 years and prepare an annual report every year to report on the activities of the service during the previous fiscal year. Before I turn it over to Inspector Allen, who will present both the 2019 to 2021 business plan as well as the 2017 annual report, I would like to recognize and introduce the entire team that put a lot of work into developing these products. We are very fortunate to have some very talented expertise in the areas of research, planning, service review, and outcome assessment as part of our London Police family. Joan Atchison has worked in the area of research and planning her entire career, and one of her primary responsibilities here at the LPS for a number of years has been the creation of the business plan and the annual reports. Joan is an advanced certified law enforcement planner, and in 2016 was the recipient of the Arthur J. Barnett Planner of the Year Award presented by the International Association of Law Enforcement Planners. Gail Schmidt is our program evaluation specialist and is another key member of the corporate support and continuous improvement branch. Gail has extensive knowledge and experience in terms of program evaluation, service review, outcome assessment, and metrics development. I'd also like to acknowledge our corporate communications manager, Roxanne Beaubien, who has put a great deal of work, along with her team, into the layout and both the annual report and the business plan, as well as a video that you'll see shortly. Now I'm going to turn it over to Inspector Tom Allen, who's been a longtime member of the London Police Service and has served in a number of different enforcement, investigative, and administrative portfolios. He is currently overseeing the corporate support and continuous improvement branch, and in addition to directing the process, was actively involved with this entire team in order to put together what I think is a very robust and comprehensive plan and annual report, along with metrics that will assist us in monitoring and measuring how we are doing in meeting the goals laid out in the plan. So with no further ado, I turn it over to Inspector Allen.
Deputy Chief about the efforts of Joan, Gail, and Roxanne. This plan was a little bit different than in previous years, where it was more of a team effort, utilizing and capitalizing on the considerable talents that are in the building. The three ladies, they did the heavy lifting, so I want to make sure that's clear. They did a fantastic job. So during the implementation phase, we were guided by and consistent with the tone and message coming out of the ministry. Bill C-175, ministry correspondence, the Policing Effectiveness and Modernization Initiative, all emphasizing community wellness and community well-being. We were also guided by the requirements of Ontario Adequacy Standards, Ontario Reg 395. During the consultation stage, we undertook several community consultations, chiefs conversations, several community group meetings, and gathered considerable feedback through this process, ensuring we had a fulsome understanding of the community concerns, expectations of the police service, and that was essential for us establishing our goals and objectives and areas of focus that related to the core functions of policing, identified in the Act. The result is this year's 2019 to 2021 business plan, A Vision for a Safer London. You'll see a quick snapshot up there at a quick glance in terms of what the business plan is, and you have a hard copy before you. As part of that, the next piece is the annual report. The annual report is basically a snapshot within the 3-year cycle of a business plan. What you have before you is 2017, which is year 2 of the 3-year current business plan. We're about 6 months behind, and that's why you're receiving it today. We have at a glance view. It was a busy year in 2017 with some notable accomplishments, which you have before you. I don't see a need to read them. They're there and expanded further in the fulsome report that you have before you. And we also have a video, which is also an enhancement to previous years and reports. Again, a byproduct of the considerable talents of the team that we'd like to show you.
Each year, we report to the community on our accomplishments and activities in our annual report. More than 800 police officers, civilian employees, special constables, cadets, and volunteer auxiliary officers have worked together to ensure the safety and well-being of London's communities over the last year. We are committed to being responsive to the changing needs of our community. Several initiatives were implemented over the course of 2017 to improve service, enhance our partnerships and investigations, and to build relationships with those we serve. There are many examples, some of which you can learn about in the annual report section of our website at londonpolice.ca. This video highlights 4 of these successes. From our uniform division, you will meet one of our foot patrol officers, a program that was expanded in 2017. The partnerships they have with businesses and service agencies is a vital part of the ongoing success of this program. From the Criminal Investigation Division, you'll meet a civilian crime analyst who is supporting the front line, developing the intelligence that enables targeted enforcement. In the Support Services Division, our record screening operators, or RSOs, have made significant strides in reducing the waiting time for background checks and improving service to the public. And finally, in a story from the Corporate Services Division, you'll meet one of the graduates of the 2017 Youth Citizens Academy. This program is just one example of the great work being done to reach out to youth in our community to demystify policing. I'd like to thank everyone within the London Police Service family for their continued dedication to the people we serve. Your deeds do speak louder than words. And secondly, thank you for watching and for the incredible support we receive from Londoners and the many partners with whom we work. It is sincerely appreciated.
I've been with the London Police Service Foot Patrol Unit for approximately a year. The experience has been great, being able to interact and develop partnerships within the community on a daily basis. We see community involvement as a large part of our success in the Foot Patrol Unit. Through developing relationships within the community, it helps us identify underlying causes of crime.
In 2016, we had 12 members on our Foot Patrol unit. In 2017, we were able to add 2 additional members to the unit, bringing it up to a total of 14 members. This has a significant impact to the community and allows us to, at a grassroots level, attend to more calls for service where an officer in a vehicle may not be the best element to respond.
The partnerships that we've been able to build with the police to help ensure that the people that we serve are safe and are well taken care of has been incredibly valuable to our organization, but also to the people that we serve. So it's trust, it's a real ethic of knowing each other and building relationships and just picking up the phone and resolving issues when problems arise.
The most rewarding part of being a part of the Foot Patrol Unit is not only being able to affect positive change within the community, but being able to see firsthand the progression of the community. We interact with everyone on a daily basis, which gives us the opportunity to see and hear about the work that we do and what it's accomplishing.
The London Police is engaged in intelligence-led policing, and one of the prime duties of the Crime Analysis Unit is to support that focus. What we do is we provide the information to commanders to come up with a joint response to deal with problems that we identify in the city.
My job is to look at persons crime throughout the city, and so I'm monitoring that. And so things like robberies and assaults, I'll be reading as they come in.
In 2017, we finished our transition from a unit that was all police officers looking at crime to a unit that is now all civilians looking at crime. And we hired civilians, all who have master's degrees, for the specific purpose that we want them to not only read what is happening in the city, but also be able to analyze the data using their advanced skills and education.
In this particular pattern, we started seeing similar type of group robberies and assaults, primarily young males attacking smaller groups of males. It ultimately ended up with, I believe, 16 people arrested, spanning 72 criminal charges. So it was, I think, quite successful. Feels great, you know, knowing that we can play some type of part in supporting these investigations and making a tangible difference.
In 2017, the London Police Service background checks were running at approximately 8 weeks turnaround. As a result of that, to reduce the backlog, we increased our RSO complement from 5 to 6. We've also brought our staff over from the Police Reporting Center, creating 4 intake and processing attendants. This really helped to alleviate some of the administrative duties. As a result of this relocation of staff, it allows the RSOs to concentrate more time on their background checks. And we were open from 4 days a week, 8:30 to 4 p.m. We are currently open Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have decreased our time from 8 weeks to approximately 2 weeks.
So in 2017, we had our second cohort of our Youth Academy, which is meant for high school students who are interested in just learning more about policing.
So I signed up for the Citizens Academy because I have an interest in policing, so I just figured it was a great way to get some more knowledge. So there's a lot of introduction to every single department, so it kind of opened your eyes about how much they have to offer here.
We do cover a lot about different units in the police service. For me, the biggest thing though is the relationship we build with the youth and that the youth build with each other. And then we do some leadership building as well with the youth. So the youth internally will learn about our major crime, our cyber crime, our emergency response unit, our canine unit, which everybody loves, the dogs of course. They learn about our communications, they learn about the recruiting process. Of course, they learn about what the diversity officer does as well.
I think it's definitely amazing. Like, it's not like it's just focused on one thing. You get to learn so much in such a short period of time, and it just really helps you to gain that knowledge that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise.
I would say one of the biggest successes is the amount of people that are interested in this program. The second year of it running, which was 2017, we had 60 applications, and unfortunately I was only able to take 30 students. But I think that shows that there was a need, and we've been able to hopefully fill some of that need, and we'll see what else we can do from here on in.
I would, of course, recommend it to anybody. Even if it's not just for policing, it does open your eyes about meeting other people, getting to know more about your community and what goes on, and of course the bonus of getting to know more about policing as well.
That was awesome.
I'd also like to recognize and acknowledge the considerable feedback we got internally and externally from the community and our members. The success rate on our surveys was very impressive, which went a long way to ensure that we had a good idea of the direction that we should take. It's our expectation that the material that you have before you should be posted on the website before the end of the day, and by tomorrow there should be another email with some further materials coming to council.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the police board, congratulations and thank you all for countless hours of effort in putting this amazing thing and making me look great on here and making sure all those typos that I probably would have put in there myself, cleaning that up. So on behalf of the police board, thank you very much. And I want to turn maybe to the chief first before, and then I'll come back to the board.
We had to do a lot of work with your picture, but I think we got it there. But, anyways. It is a bit different this year, and I think the video, and one of the things that we were trying, one of the objectives really was, there's a lot of great work that's done by the men and women of the London Police Service, and I think we tried to personalize it and have them tell their stories. And it was actually, I think the people I spoke to had a lot of fun doing it and getting to tell their side of the story and what they do and be proud of the work they do. So it was nice to see it turn out really well. And the reports, again, we went a little different route than we normally do with, getting away from so much statistical data that sometimes people don't understand, but more telling stories about what is being done and trying to capture the statistics within those stories. So You know, to me, it seems a little bit more appealing to read, and you want to take a look at it and try to see what's going on. So a lot of credit to everyone that was part of this and put it together, and I think it's a good product.
Mayor Brown?
Well, thanks, Chair, and thanks everyone for the incredible work. I think sometimes we do rely a little bit too much on statistics to tell a story when the story is in there, but you have to find it and you have to articulate it. I think that's exactly what has been done. The video is amazing. I think that one of the things that I want to congratulate the organization on is the wait time reduction for the criminal reference checks. I can remember as a counselor 7 years ago, the first summer season that rolled around, and I remember students and coaches who were just looking to volunteer were really surprised to see it might take 8 weeks or more in some cases, the whole summer before the criminal check can be done. And to reduce that down to 2 weeks is really phenomenal. I know that it's not a core part of the business, but for many Londoners, it's the only contact that they might have with the police service throughout a year or even a decade. And the level of customer service you can offer at 2 weeks is really, really impressive. So lots of great stories. I wanted to highlight that one because it's shown significant improvement, and I think that you should be congratulated for that.
So I'm just gonna go from the chair, if that's okay. I just had a couple questions or comments I think that are important to recognize. I know that when you're looking at, for example, page 11 on the LPS indicators of the Vision for a Safer London material, and when you look at particularly domestic violence calls, we notice that it's up 18%. And I wanted to talk about the 7% being up for the time of investigations. And I think it's important to recognize it's not that, from my perspective, based on what I've learned so far, that it's not, that it's, the delays have to do with the London Police Service in particular, but the amount of new processes in place that the government and some of the new policies in place. So I thought it was maybe important for people to kind of just touch on that, because I know that's something that hits close to a lot of people at home. So I wondered, Chief or Inspector, or whoever can touch on that, speak to that.
Yeah, domestic violence is one area where there's a lot of legislative requirements from professional standards that have been developed over the years so that to assist us in doing a better job. And it's a lot of those legislative requirements that are driving those investigation times up. It's the increased paperwork for the bail safety program to ensure victims are safe. It's the safety planning that goes along with the victims to ensure they're safe again, and to ensure thorough investigations are done so that the best evidence is brought forward in court. So a lot of those is just best practices that we're trying to get better in our investigation, but a lot of it is provincially driven as well, and adequacy standards to ensure that the victims are looked after as well, not just doing the investigative piece.
Thank you, Deputy. And to go further on my comment, I wanted to mention that because I wanted to point out to members of the public and my colleagues that, some of the pieces that are important to recognize is we have a lower than average number of police officers per capita, and our officers are doing the second highest amount of number of criminal code incidents processed per officer. And when you recognize that there's new policies and procedures that are coming into place, I only anticipate that the amount of work that individual officers are doing are going to strain our resources and put more pressure on the individual officers and the frontline officers. So I kind of wanted to just mention that, and I don't know if there's any suggestions or recommendations, but I think the reality is it's a conversation that we can't avoid, and I think we recognize that you guys are going to have to do more work, and we're going to have less people on the ground to be able to respond to things in the timely fashion that maybe the public wants to and that you guys want to as well. But I just felt from a governance point that it was important to mention that. So I don't know if there's any suggestions on that front. I don't know if you guys have the solution to that as today, but I think it's important for us to I just wanted us to have that conversation since we're talking about this, and it's an important one.
I think a real simple solution is looking at the numbers. We need more officers on the street. The workload is increasing, and the domestic violence piece I talked about was, that's just one area where we're getting more push down adequacy legislation that requires the workload is just going up. And what's suffering at the customer level is our customer service. Our response times are suffering. The ability of our officers to have to provide that good customer service is, through no fault of their own, through no fault of the organization, honestly, it's suffering, and I'll offer that solution to you, being you offered me the opportunity.
And I think to go further, I wanted us, I know there's a new government in place, but I wanted this board to work with administration to draft a kind of some feedback to the province to say that potentially we might need some new resources, because when we look at, for example, domestic violence, I think that was the province is saying that you have to do these pieces of paperwork. Or, for example, when you have the traffic accidents, the ministry transportation forms, you still have to do those, from my understanding as well. And I think if we can kind of have an opportunity where administration and sport can work together to write a letter, and then we can send it to the province and say, we need more resources because you are expecting us to do more with the same amount of resources, I think is a reasonable step. So I just wanted to move that. So I'll do that later on at the end of this conversation. But hopefully just wanted to see if administration had any comments on that suggestion before I get into my next question.
Actually, it was, I think it was a resolution just recently at the OACP annual general meeting that discussions with government about the implications of new legislation and these types of changes in the impact on workload and resources for police services. So, you know, if you wanted to provide a letter that supports that motion, I'm sure that they would take a look at it anyways. I'm not sure they're going to respond quickly, but at least take a look at it.
Well, I think we have, this board has had a 50% batting average on some of our advocacy, so I think we might get somewhere, but I have to look at all the details of each point of the OACPC letter or recommendations, but I think, so I'll make sure that in that motion it captures that the board work on a letter with administration and maybe kind of look at the points raised from the chief as well. The other piece I wanted to mention is the mental health calls. I know we keep talking about it, but it's important to continue. When we look at it in the 10-year trends, it's up 67%, which I think is a significant number. And I know I'm talking to the association and watching their Twitter feeds and some of the other association leaders across Ontario, that portfolio of it continually being a police responsibility and them having to do and deal with that because there's gaps and because no one else wants to address that, and the public being upset that there's a lack of resources or what comes out of some of those interactions, and it leads to a lot of challenges. And I think it needs to be a conversation that we need to have every single time we're doing this, because it's 67% now, and then when we come back the next time we're talking about this, is it going to be 87%? Is it going to be 97%? And I think it's not okay, and it's not all right to expect the frontline officers to be experts in every single thing in our community and try to address all the concerns in the community. So I wanted to see if administration had any response to that.
This is an area we've long recognized and long spoken about, both locally and at the OACP level, and recognizing that the government needs to invest more money in healthcare, in mental health services, so they can provide that preventative, proactive piece before they get in crisis. And that's when we usually deal with these people, is when they're in crisis. And the unfortunate part is our officers are stuck dealing with mental health issues. It's not a law enforcement function per se, but it is something we deal with in addition to some other social concerns in the community that we're forced to, because a lot of times we're the only 24/7 business in town. Our officers are out there, and our officers won't turn a blind eye when they see somebody struggling or get called to a circumstance, and we have to deal with the issue with the tools they have on the street, with the legislations that's in place. And the unfortunate part of, setting aside the proactive prevention lack of funding, when our officers deal with them, there's a lack of resources for them to take these people to or to refer them to get them the help they need to deal with them in the point of crisis that they're at. So I think it's certainly something we need to keep talking about and recognizing that our officers are faced with a very difficult position of dealing with these people, and that we would be supportive of more funding being put into the proper resources to deal with effectively with this problem in healthcare and mental health services.
Just to add on to that, and the public needs survey that went out, this is the second time that mental illness or mental health has been in the top 5 in a police survey in terms of responsibilities. And this year, this past public needs survey is the first time that homelessness and poverty has appeared as a priority for the police to deal with. And mental health, homelessness, and poverty, we have a role to play. We're a stakeholder at the table, but it's not ours to resolve. But that's how the public even views the responsibilities. So it's just the pendulum has swung, and those that are responsible need to take on that responsibility to deal with it. We don't want to be part of the solution, but it shouldn't be our responsibility to resolve those issues.
Thank you, and not to hog up the microphone, I'll just say, just one thing, I completely and wholeheartedly support the fact that this shouldn't be a police role, and I think someone needs to take responsibility for this, and hopefully maybe I'll add that piece to the letter, but I'll be quiet for now and turn over to Member Javid and look to other members.
There's just two comments I wanted to make. First, in response to the discussion related to mental health. I appreciate Deputy Chief Longworth's comments regarding the sensitivity and compassion that I've seen from members of the police service when called upon to serve, despite feeling like this isn't their area of expertise or that they haven't been trained adequately in addressing mental illness. I also agree completely that when we have a force that's constrained in resources and we're seeing trends that we're seeing now, trends that I don't anticipate changing, in fact, perhaps getting worse, I'm not only concerned about the need for early intervention and resourcing community-based care to prevent people from getting into crisis, but I'm also very concerned about the mental health of our force. Because if you have a stretched force and you have individuals on the front lines dealing with extremely traumatizing experiences, there's a great deal of vicarious trauma. And I think that that's part and parcel of what's recognized in your plan, in that there's an explicit recognition related to organizational capacity on addressing issues related to the wellness of the force. So I think it's important we think as a police services board of both sides of that piece. On a general note related to the plan, I wanted to commend the service and the chiefs. I'm quite impressed, being new to the board, at how comprehensive it is, how much community consultation went into it. And I'm also quite impressed with the language. Oftentimes we don't pay attention to the words that we choose, but the words that you've chosen in regards to addressing issues of victimization and re-victimization, in terms of addressing issues of diversity and inclusion, makes me proud to be a resident of London and to know that our service is taking these things seriously. I feel we've set the bar quite high now, and so our challenge will be not only to address, implement, and have the adequate and most meaningful metrics to evaluate the goals that you've set that are ambitious, but also then continue to build upon your work and scale and spread it so that other jurisdictions can learn from it.
Looking for any other members? Member Helmer?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about one of the objectives. It actually kind of shows up twice. So first one it shows up under the law enforcement area of focus. So deploying patrols based on analysis of calls for service. And then later on under the third strategic priority, under infrastructure, there's an objective that says to update and consolidate existing deployment formulas and beat patrol plan. I wonder if you could just speak a little bit to what is involved in those two objectives. I know it's an important part of the deployment of police in a sort of patrol manner, and I know it's not the only part of policing, and there's lots of other things that go on, but that one is one I think the public doesn't necessarily understand very well, and I wonder if you just want to address how those two objectives are linked, and what you expect to do this year and throughout the course of the plan when it comes to those two.
Well, there we go. I can speak to the beat patrol plan. So we have a beat patrol plan that governs patrol operations. So these are the uniform officers that you see on the street answering calls. And the plan is literally decades old. And it's built around a staffing formula and a call analysis that was done quite some time ago. We've tinkered with it over the years, but we've determined after a couple of solid years of talking about it and looking at it that it needs to be updated significantly. So one of the things we're moving towards for next year is to basically build it from the ground back up to truly be intelligence-based and deploy our resources as effectively and as efficiently we can at the front line. We really need to start over. So that's one thing that we're moving towards sometime next year. So that'll we'll have further information as that rolls out. But it's a significant change in the way we do business on the front line, and it's I think it'll really improve our frontline operations.
Looking for any other members? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Echoing what some of my colleagues have mentioned, amazing work. So thank you to everyone who's contributed this. A couple of things I just wanted to really highlight for members at home who may not have this in front of them, that the second priority, the community well-being, I'm really happy to see the focus on equity, diversity, inclusiveness, as well as response to victims, vulnerable, and racialized groups. I think that's such an important aspect to building trust with those communities, and it's great to see that. And I'm seeing specific references being made to response to victims and people in mental health and addictions crisis, which I'm sure frontline officers know more well than anybody else what that looks like on a street level, much more than I would. So I appreciate that. The only other thing I wanted to mention as well is I'm always really interested to look at the results of the internal surveys and what's going on with the membership. As a civilian oversight, I try to listen to what the community needs are, and the one missing piece of the puzzle for me sometimes is trying to understand what the needs are of the people who are out there on the ground. And just looking at some of the issues that they write, this, I'm looking at page 11, the internal input, some of the issues, and just turning to your strategic priority 3 and how you're going to continue to develop the wellness of your own employees, and playing on what Member Sukera was talking about as well as this vicarious trauma, and we hear about PTSD and supporting officers through that as well. So I want to commend you for doing those internal surveys and finding out what's going on, and even from the diversity piece we've been talking about when Mr. Leroy Hubert was here a few weeks ago, talking about diversity in your own membership and making sure that we're seeing that in all levels of policing as well. So thank you very much, and that's one that I know I'll be continuing to look at as well. So, and thank you, really well done.
So looking for any other members from the board? All right, so I just wanted to just craft my motion so it's a little bit more clear, because I know I was just going off on a long rant. So to make it clear, so the motion would be for administration to work with the board to draft a letter to the appropriate ministries, copying along AMO, because I know they do some advocacy for us, and I think they need to be very loud and clear on quite a few of these fronts, and as well as the Ontario Association of Police Services boards, because we need to also get them on board with us to raise these concerns that I think London should definitely, I know others have talked about it, I know associations have talked about it quite regularly, and you heard chiefs across the province and as well. But the motion would be for us to work with the administration to look at some of the points the recommendations that came from the Ontario Associations of Chiefs of Police, as well as look at what we are facing here locally and some of the numbers and the increases and why it's taking time, spending more time on investigations, and sometimes it's rightly so, sometimes it's needed, but recognize that that's going to need more resources. Since the province is asking us to do that, I think they should be better funding us to do some of those pieces, so we can craft a letter that speaks to that, as well as around the Ministry of Transportation. That still happens with the paperwork that has to happen there, the domestic violence calls, with the investigations and the paperwork around that, and as well, I wanted us to include the mental health file. I think we need to be very clear that that should be just not part of, shouldn't have to be a police portfolio, and it shouldn't have to be your responsibility, but I know police officers are doing what they can, but that needs to be very clear, and I wanted to capture that in the letter as well. So I'll move that if the vice chair can be the presiding officer for the remainder of this portion.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Member Sukera. Any questions? Comments? All in favor? Carried.
Perfect, thank you very much. So I'll just look again for any speakers on this matter. So I just wanted to conclude by saying, again, honestly, I've had an opportunity to look over quite a few other annual reports and business plans across Ontario and even across Canada from other services. And I have to say, with all honesty, that this is probably one of the greatest I've seen. And I just wanted to commend you on behalf of this Police Service Board and all of you for the amount of work that went into this. I know you guys have set the bar, and I know the board is very happy with what we're seeing here today. So I just wanted to thank you very much. course, I always forget one thing to do. We have to have a motion to receive the report and the annual reports. So moved by Vanessa. Oh, we actually have to approve it. We don't have to approve it, but a motion, they're asking us to support the recommendation
Before they post it this afternoon.
before they post it. So I believe the move still stands by Vanessa to approve, or was that a question? Moved by Vanessa, seconded by Susan. All those in favor? And it carries. Thank you very much. All right, you guys can have the rest of the day off. I guess I can't say that if you have to the chief, but all right. We have a new business item. Remember, Vanessa wasn't here at the initial stage, but Vanessa, just to bring it up to cap, I did move a motion to recognize National Indigenous Peoples Day. That was supported unanimously, and I know you had an interest in moving a motion as well, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to take a moment just to honor what the day also could mean for, the people in London, as well as looking at it from sort of a governance level and what role we might have with respect to furthering our commitment to the process of truth finding. And I think that's very much in line with the purpose and the intention behind honoring and recognizing National Indigenous Peoples Day. And one of the things that underlies that concept of truth finding is that we're looking at ways to build relationships with a common understanding around how we can see relationships and see Indigenous and non-Indigenous people working together in new ways. And as I think about community safety, it is very clear to me that there are parts of our population, people in our population who are more vulnerable, who have had who have been exposed to many different conditions within the environment that would place them at a higher risk for violence, for many things. And I'm talking about Indigenous people, and in particular Indigenous women and children. And so I think it's only fitting that one of the ways that we might consider moving forward with our work as governors of the Police Services Board is to start to say, we've made a commitment to review the calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada report, which speak to just that, looking at ways to enhance our relationships, our accountability, and our ability to be more responsive to some of the most vulnerable people. But what I'd like to say is that, taking it a step further, I would propose that today would be a really appropriate day to look at how we can start to move from this notion of reconciliation or rebuilding relationships towards action. And so I'm a very strong supporter of policy and of looking at ways to, translate some of these intentions into a deliberate action. And the reason I think deliberate is key in this situation is because, there has been a lot of good intentions that we've seen and we've experienced through many different systems, through police services, through healthcare, through education. However, that doesn't always result in the changes that we want to see in the system. And that could be witnessed through all of the various pieces of evidence that we do have that tell a story that can show us that there are some pretty large gaps in terms of the well-being of Indigenous people. So I'd like to say that with that understanding and with the knowledge that the Indigenous community in the City of London is growing by leaps and bounds, and in fact, one of the pieces that I noticed in the environmental scan, and it's not a limitation of the people who created the report. It's actually a limitation of the available data that we've had in the past to use has changed. So what we thought was, an approximate baseline population of about 6,000 Indigenous people. In the City of London is actually 26,000 Indigenous people to 34,000, and that's still a conservative estimate. And what we've been able to do is start to look at methodologies of collecting data that work in ways that are going to start to access people who may not have a fixed address and therefore would have been excluded from the National Household Survey and the different mechanisms that Stats Canada has access to, as well as accounting for people who have a highly mobile or a high homeless population. And so I just wanted to put it out there that there is new data available called Our Health Counts London, and that report is available or will be widely available shortly. But basically what this information and this evidence is telling us is that there is a critical need to start to revisit what level of support we're able to provide to a population that is far greater than what we thought, coupled with some of the data that helps to uncover the depth and the degree of poverty and of violence that Indigenous people are experiencing in the city alone. So with that in mind, I'd like to put to motion that the London Police Services Board adopt a call to action, so number 43 from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission Report of Canada, which speaks to adopting and implementing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People as a framework for reconciliation within the board's forthcoming strategic plan.
So it was moved by you. Look for a seconder. Moved by Susan Toth, Vice Chair. So thank you for that. We'll look at, if I get your microphone, we'll look to the members for any discussion. Susan?
I can't support this more strongly. I am so grateful, Vanessa, for your expertise, your input, bringing this forward, making sure that this becomes part of the lens with which we view the work that we're doing. So just really just an appreciation for bringing this forward, and I support it wholeheartedly.
Looking for any other members? Mayor?
Just very quickly, thank you very much for bringing this forward, and I can't think of a more appropriate day for us to pass this motion. Thank you.
Great. Any other members? Anyone else? All right, before I call the question, I wanted to say thanks for bringing this forward, and I'm wholeheartedly supporting this as well. So all those in favor? And it carries unanimously. All right, so we did a pretty good job at getting through the meeting. So look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Susan, seconded by Vanessa. All those in favor? And it carries. And as we do at every meeting, it's an open mic opportunity for community members, which occurs after the end of the meeting. So you have 5 minutes to say whatever you like. I see Rick is up there. I know he has a long speech ready for us to go. Come on, Rick, say hello at least. All right, there he goes. So I'll ask 3 times for the members of the public if anyone wants to say anything to the police board. Going once, going twice, and 3 times. Thank you very much. And the next meeting will be held
September 20th.
September 20th, 2018. As you know, this summer, usually there's not too many board meetings, but there probably will be some standing committee meetings, and we'll post those accordingly. As well, I should note that July 28th, the board will have a board member strategy session as well. So that's going to be on there as well, and you'll see that as well on our website. Just wanted to mention that for transparency. So thank you all very much for being here today.
Okay, I just got to say, I've never seen Rick Robbins so quiet before, and there's a microphone available. I just had to say it, sorry.